Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode 72 of the Podcana podcast. It is just myself and Moyen for today's episode since Brendan is in, I imagine, an apartment with a lot of boxes and no internet. That's kind of what he told us. So Brendan's not going to be available this week, possibly not next week as well, but we'll give you guys an update when he returns, of course. So the headlines for this week's episode, as you guys have been seeing throughout the week, I've been posting videos of the Set Championship, the influencer event in London that myself and Moyen attended last weekend. I did manage to come out on top. I was in the bin during Birmingham, and I was redeemed, and I jumped back up to the top for this event. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we'll just kind of discuss our thoughts on the event. I'll discuss my deck that I played, obviously, because we were highlighting it throughout the week. And we'll also catch up on the Spilled Ink section that we missed from last week's episode. But yeah, just a quick introduction or rundown of how the event went. Moyen, what was your experience? Was this your first time in London, actually, or have you been to London before?
Yeah, I've never been.
Awesome.
The only sightseeing I did was like in the Uber. I kind of saw the London Eye from the side.
Nice.
But yeah, I enjoyed my time a lot. I'm grateful I got invited. The tournament itself, I went 3-2. The two losses were a little bit more on the unfortunate side of things, but 3-2 is still all right. And I just had a great time. I've been playing some, because we all got some goodie bags. I've been playing some Villainous since, and that's been a lot of fun as well. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah, the event was super, super fun. Actually, speaking about Villainous, so they gave us, like Moyen said, this goodie bag full of board games and playmats and stuff like that. And myself and Kim were like, "How are we gonna get this home? Like, we do not have space," because I brought all of my recording gear. So I was like, you know what, Kim? Let's play it cool. So I just walked through security with these two massive bags, so that no one says anything. I come through, nothing said at all. So it was pretty clean, and it was really nice because it was the Villainous with the Prince John promo card, right, which is like the exclusive promo. But yeah, like if you guys actually haven't played Villainous and you get a chance to play it, it's quite a fun game. Like I was saying to someone before that I discovered Diablo. There's a Diablo card in Villainous that I saw like before Diablo came out in Lorcana, and it was so funny to me that when Diablo released, I was like, oh, he's broken in Lorcana, but he was also pretty good in Villainous as well. Yeah.
Apparently, the Prince John was already revamped in his balancing. I played against my girlfriend; she crushed me.
Yeah,
and but maybe Prince John's still pretty good.
Yeah, Prince John again, another card broken in Villainous, broken in Lorcana. It's the reason why it was in my deck, but yeah, it was really, really good. There was 30 players in total. There was supposed to be 32, but 2 players couldn't make it, unfortunately, due to cancellations and sickness. But yeah, as you guys know, I played Amber Emerald, the exact same deck that I ran in Birmingham. 60 cards, of course. Never over 60 cards in the deck like this, especially, but should never be over 60 cards in a deck, in my opinion. Anyways, but yeah, it worked out pretty well. I have to say though, my matchups throughout the event were not easy at all. I don't think I had one favorable matchup. Maybe one. I think I played an Amethyst Steel, which I should kind of crush if I get to my Under the Sea easily enough, because there's no song removal from them. They're a little bit aggressive, so it can be a little bit difficult. But like I played against some really, really tough decks. I played against Emerald Amethyst a couple of times, which I think that matchup I actually think is slightly favored into Emerald Amethyst, especially if they run 3-drop kick Cloud Kicker, because it can really just out-tempo you. You'll play like a Diablo. Even if you like shift a Diablo, that's good to start off, but then you play an Aerial, they'll bounce it. You play Diablo, they'll bounce it. So against the kit strategy, you really just have to hope for like the Prince John and the Muses line. Muses absolutely crushes Lyle though. Muses was so good against Lyle, and even if Lyle targets Diablo or Aerial, gives it reckless, it's just most of the time you can just sing a song with it anyway, so that wasn't like too much of an issue. But the games were definitely a grind. Like I sat down at the event, I was like, this is going to be a nice event. There's a creator event, it's going to be nice, and it was like an absolute sweat fest for me. I don't know about you, Moyen, but it was some people came to win. Some people came to win.
Quite sweaty. It's I know. I think it's easy to look at these events and think like, oh, it's just content creators, but I guess at least 90% of the players that were there were like much better than your average set champs competitor.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, definitely the games definitely weren't easy. I think my highlight was from my top 8 match where the game went to time. Even in top 8, it went to time, and then it basically how when you're in top 8, how do you decide the winner after the 5 turns are over if no one's reached 20 lore? Well, it's basically the person who ends with the most lore, right? So I had a crazy like turn where I had to like really calculate, okay, if I do like a key to Under the Sea and still quest with like my Cricky and other stuff, I get to like 15 against 14. But if they top deck a Zeus and kill my Cricky, then I lose because I can't quest up or whatever. It was absolutely wild, but that was one of my highlights. But yeah, like I said, I was against a lot of Emerald Amethyst and then also Amber Steel, which is still not an easy matchup by any means, but I managed to pull through, managed to win the event. And yeah, if you guys can check out the games, obviously just have a look at the channel and you can see all the highlights there.
Yeah, also, because recently we've had lots of discussion again about the format that we're using with best of 2, best of 3. And I do think the best of 3 was, I mean, with all the upset that it has, I think especially in your games, the potential issue of time was highlighted very well, where I think you and your opponents were playing in good faith, but I think either player could have easily tried to use time to their advantage.
Oh yeah.
And to an extent, that's within the rules. So that's the part that I think is most problematic about best of 3. But we don't have to go into the entire argument again.
For sure, yeah. But I do think it was interesting because I remember speaking to you about this for like the best of 3 thing, at least when, you know, when a game goes to time. There were no timers in this room, which I think there didn't need to be timers. Like it wasn't a super uber competitive event. Although I did have some of my opponents saying, oh, if there was a timer, I would have like, you know, made sure that when it was time, I was on, you know, I wasn't on turn 0, because if you're on turn 0, it basically means nothing because you only get turn 2, turn 4 to actually play the game. Whereas if you get the turn 1, you'll get turn 1, turn 3, and turn 5 to potentially quest to like finish the game.
You
know?
want to have like the last turn of the game yourself.
Yeah, so like I found that interesting, and I was also asking you, but like technically like it's not really against the rules that if you had that information to see the timer, just wait a little bit, like to, you know, maybe quest with this and take your time, and then to kind of take advantage. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to an extent, there's like this frame in which you're doing your reasonable time frame in which you can do your reasonable turn, and just depending on the time situation, of course, you can maybe take a little bit longer, a little bit less time. And we've had lots of very experienced TCG players also from Magic and other card games, and I'm sure they were very aware of all these things that you can do in these very seasoned formats as well.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, before we dive deeper into the tournament, I'm going to jump over to the Spilled Ink section. This is the listener question section. If you guys want to have your question read out on next week's episode of the podcast, be sure to pop a comment down below. The first one is from I'm going to say Dr. Wizzy, or DRWZY. They say, rip the Moistache 2024 to 2024. It's maybe making a comeback right now. I think if the audience likes it, it stays.
If I shave off the rest, maybe we can pull it off again soon.
Yep.
I do think this for a YouTube comment in our section, this was like very much like this comment.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know, Moyen. I was looking at the analytics when you had the Moistache. The numbers were higher. Let me just tell you that. Yeah, for sure. The next comment is from Dragon. It says, thanks guys for the podcast. When it came down to the deck I played, I listened to y'all's opinions, and then I made top 8 at Vegas. Wow, I remember in when I was in Toronto as well, there was someone that came up to me that was like, yeah, I think they got top 16 or got top 8, and they were like, yeah, I really appreciate everything you guys do on the podcast. It gave me like a lot of advice and stuff, and that really kind of like, that really blows me away. It's always nice to receive like support, but when you hear about a player who's actually performed like so well in a major tournament and they're listening to our advice and stuff like that, it is really, really nice to hear that.
That's really good. At the end of the day, I always feel like, I don't know, I don't want to have the impact that we have on your guys' performance overblown, because at the end of the day, it's full credit to the player.
Of course. Oh,
this.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm happy that people that are listening to the podcast are having success.
Yeah, that we could have helped in any way at all, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? That's like super, super cool. Next comment is from Robert. They say, I'm on 4 castle, no library in Ruby Amethyst. I'm on all 1-3-1 drops, so Olaf, Minnie Mouse, stuff like that. The Amber Seal match is greatly improved without losing too much from the other matches. I think the more I've played against Ruby Amethyst, the more I like this change in general. Like, I also just like feel like castle is still so much more stronger than library in general. Like, I feel like if library comes down, even if I don't get to deal with it too fast, like, they still need to have the characters to kind of occupy it and then those characters to die. So if they don't specifically have the 1-drops to pair along with the library doesn't feel like as much as a threat besides when a castle.
In those decks, they play 8 of these 1-drops. I think in one episode we also talked about this. Like, there's the split in Ruby Amethyst versions. Either they play brooms, Turner Box, and a few libraries on top of the castles, or instead of the brooms they play 1-3s and then they don't play the library. And this is a valid version that will be great. That will definitely significantly improve the MSD matchup. I would think though that it does significantly hurt some other matchups where you are less likely to keep your engine going, to keep continuously being able to use all your resources in the mirror against red-blue, where these things, even if they don't end the game as quickly as the castle, they are very, very inefficient to deal with. So sometimes, for example, as red-blue, the only way to deal with like library and some mediocre threats in them is not actually to deal with them, but you have to play your own threat, because any removal that you could play kind of gets rid of one or the other. It doesn't even do that super well in comparison to what they spent on it. So it can definitely, in the right hands, create some very, very awkward situations for your opponents. But so I think this is mostly a meta call on how much Ember Steel versus other decks do you really expect.
I do think I still personally prefer the line of, like, if you want like the strongest opening, in my opinion, because if you're doing the library on 3 with your 1-drops, like, sure, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards and stuff, but like you said, I just think if you get to establish that Flynn, Sisu, and Castle...
No, it's even in the Flynn, Sisu line, Castle is not most often not your best 4-drop. You would just want, like, the best opening in most matchups would just be Flynn, Sisu, Rabbit.
Yeah, but still, if you're doing Flynn, Sisu over like library on 3, is what I'm saying. You know, like, I think establishing even alone the Flynn, Sisu over the library opener, I think is like Flynn, Sisu is way better in my opinion.
I don't think library is a 3-drop. Of course, you can play it on 3, but I don't think that's where it's at its best. It's more like turn 7, turn 8, where you play it alongside other things, or immediately can move some things and use it, where it's much better. I don't think you want, because also playing locations inherently is a tempo loss, because it can get challenged, but it cannot challenge anything, and you don't. So it's locations are never really about getting them down as early as possible usually. So but I think mid game, late game is really where it would shine. It's not like you keep Castle to play it turn 4 in blind. You would never do it in most matchups. You would never do it. Castle likewise is just a card that's great at getting value out of like a somewhat equal or advantageous board state for you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. Next comment is from Eli. Damn, Kim getting a stream featured before you guys. Congrats to her. That was an entertaining game. Yeah, Kim has kind of been a little bit blown away by... there's been a lot of people that have just messaged her and stuff like that, and like, you know, but like, oh yeah, like, saw you on stream and stuff like that. She was a little bit overwhelmed, but obviously, like, she was really happy. I think if I started my day off with a 2-0 on stream, I'd just be absolutely buzzing. And I think I don't know, like, obviously she played well outside of that factor, but in my opinion, I do feel like that was maybe like definitely a big confidence boost to some degree, because my worry was like, okay, it's like the 2-0 on stream, and then it's just like the tie, you know what I mean? And it was looking like that for a little bit. I think after she got her 2-0, she had like 3 ties in a row or something like that. And I'm like, you know, it's fine. Like, you're still doing good. Like, you can start getting the wins. And then she kind of got back-to-back win, and she really kind of got her confidence up. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, go ahead.
Just the round 1 streamed match, I think it can have huge impact on your tournament, because the other way around, maybe you do a mistake and you're like embarrassed you did a mistake on stream, you lose the match, and then that can really set the tone for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah. Actually, Kim told me though. I remember Kim told me more, and she was like, "You know what? I'll go on stream because even if I mess up, she was like, the bad luck is out of the way." I'm like, "Oh my god!" I'm glad you have that mindset because I'd be like, "Oh no, everyone
like,
on the
no, I don't want
podcast
to
next week." Yeah, for sure. But no, like it's really nice to see just like how much she's constantly improving and improving the more she plays the game, and also seeing like a belief in a player really come out. Like I don't know, like I've felt like a lack of confidence when I play certain decks, or I mean, I'm not gonna lie, after my performance in Birmingham, like everyone feels a little bit rough if you don't play too good. But it was my time for this tournament last weekend, and that really brought me back up. So as long as you can manage the times when you're down and just pick yourself up and keep going, like you'll get there eventually. You know what I mean? So that's just like a good mindset to have for sure. Next comment is from Darth. I've been playing Emerald Amethyst since the end of set 3. I would totally agree with your assessments of your welcome. I think that y'all may be underestimating how favored Emerald Amethyst is into Ruby Sapphire, especially with inclusions of Mother Gothel, Banzai, and Emerald Chromicon. What do you guys think about 3-drop Anna? I think she's too slow to be worth the uninkable slot, and she never feels that good on rate. I know you've experimented with a lot of versions of Emerald Amethyst, Moyen, but I played against like quite a few different versions, even in the set champs. The ones that had like a version that had like Your Welcome and Yzma's in it, which funnily enough, actually, the game plan slowly started to turn towards, oh my god, maybe my opponent can mill me with Your Welcome and Yzma, which I don't think that's ever a reason why you should specifically include those cards in the decks. Like, oh, maybe suddenly I become the mill strategy. But like these, I think Banzai is kind of like the staple in Emerald Amethyst right now, and I can really see the reason to include it. It does really suffer against the Amber Steel matchups, but I think in every matchup besides Amber Steel, against any matchup besides Steel, it is just incredibly good. Even against my deck, like I have to either Keto Under the Sea or do a Painting the Roses, Muses. It's a really, really sticky card for me to get through. The cards I'm like a little bit less sure of is like I've seen the one of Mother Gothels, which can be okay. The big ones I'm talking about for the Mother Gothel, like the 6 cost, and the Chromicons. I don't know, like I haven't had too much experience like playing against these Chromicon players. So like what are your thoughts on these cards in general that have been mentioned here within the Emerald Amethyst deck?
Yeah, I think Banzai is very much a staple. Usually, and Mother Gothel is fine, but nothing I'm afraid of. Usually the card I look at first to determine how good the red-blue matchup into Emerald Amethyst is, like how many Merfolk do they play. Those can be very efficient at posing threats. I don't have an infinite amount of experience against the Emerald Chromicon, so but I can totally see how that can buy you lots of time in the later stages of the game, and can be maybe a pain to deal with. But I think in general, I don't. Okay, I mean, okay, that's not what you're saying. You're not saying I'm saying that red blue would be greatly favored. You're saying actually Emerald Amethyst would be the deck that's favored, and I don't quite agree with that. I think it's at least even for red blue. I would say it's very slightly favored. But these with the green purple lists being a little bit up in the air on some of their inclusions, maybe against some certain lists it would be only 50, or like maybe it would even be slightly unfavored. But I think against like the stock lists, I do feel like that is a matchup I'm happy to go into.
I think that's a very fair assessment. Yeah, I think the context drastically changes with how many Merfolk and how many more of these aggressive cards are in the list, because that would make you feel like a little bit less. If they start off with Merfolk, you're like, okay, maybe I might be losing this game. Yeah.
Yes, and also I've had another comment where I in red blue discussions people are like, oh, but if you don't play the human Sisu and you play boards instead, doesn't that make the green purple matchup too bad? And I don't think it does. Like the shift line's nice, especially because they can't really interact with it super well except Lyle, and if they Lyle, you can just like sing a song to protect the human Sisu. But I think at the end of the day, it just makes the deck overall better. And even if it like would very slightly make that matchup worse, I think I'm totally fine with that. The question about Anna, I think she's like a one-off at most, because if you draw multiple of those, that's quite bad. But one of them can provide quite some flexibilities. it's not that any of her play modes are like incredible. So 5 cost 2/3, quest for 2, discard a card, or the +2 strength. None of that's really, or like the execute type effect, none of that's crazy. But having access to either of these effects at times can be quite good. And the uninkability can, of course it matters, but you can sometimes just get around it by saying, okay, instead of playing my crab on 3, I just ink my crab and play a 2/3 that quests for 2 if you just didn't need the crab effect anyways. So sometimes just like playing her as a 3-drop instead of this 5-drop also increases the flexibility of her. But even considering all these things, I think I would always play either 0 Anas or 1 Ana, because at the end of the day, she is still only good under like very certain conditions.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I had a lot of people trying to convince me to try out this card even in my deck in Amber Emerald as a one-of. And I can see it being okay as a one-of, once it's on the board, you can bounce it back with muses, you can kind of reuse that discard effect from the card. But, I mean, the Amber Emerald deck already doesn't have that many uninkables. I think it has like 11. It's the 4 Diablo, 4 John, and the 3 Under the Sea. And I'm like, it's not that adding more uninkables would be bad, but I just think anytime, specifically in that deck, where you do miss on the inkability, it really, really suffers. Like, you want to consistently be getting as much ink as possible to eventually possibly do, like, just a hard cast turn 8 Under the Sea, or just, you need to get to at least 5, because like 5 is such a key ink number to be at to do like Bruno's and other stuff as well. So, I mean, when I say that, I'll be honest, I still haven't tested the Ana enough, but like, just by looking at the card itself, I just don't think it does what my deck particularly wants to do, because even just playing it as a 3 cost 2/3 that quests for 2, like this aggressive body, that's really not doing anything. I think in my deck, you want to be using the discard effect, or you want to be using that additional, destroy a damaged creature effect. So, yeah, I think it's a fine card. Maybe it will have some more kind of usage. And also, like, I think in both of these decks, in the Emerald Amethyst deck and the Amber Emerald one, like the 3-drop slot is often quite contested, in my opinion, with some really, really good cards. You're putting another 3-drop uninkable in where maybe you already have a couple of Lyles and stuff like that. So you just need to kind of keep that in mind, I think. But it's definitely worth, testing the card out and seeing how it plays. The next comment is from Hector Harris. They say, at 44 minutes, you guys mentioned the person from the States that went to the UK instead of Vegas. And that was me. True story all the way. Love meeting Moyen. See you guys at Seattle. Yeah, I actually... Did you get to talk to this guy in the end, Moyen?
Yeah. No. Actually, we met up before the tournament even started.
Oh.
Then he got down paired to have to play against me. And then I threw out them, which... But because they were down paired, they were still like very much in contention, and I think we were both very, very close to making it, but both didn't quite make top cut. Yeah, so it was definitely great to meet them.
For sure, yeah. Next comment is from Lorcana Crafts. You guys are the best Lorcana commentary online, and all very, very likable personalities. This comment made me laugh a lot. They say, I think it could be a great experiment for your brand to go on a tour through parts of NA or EU to play with locals. I know it would be expensive and you all have jobs, but what do you think? I mean, listen, if there was a world where we could do this and we had like, I don't know, infinite money that we could just go and play with loads of... Oh my god, it sounds so hilarious to me. Fucking Podcana on tour, like we're a band or something like that. Oh my god.
But usually with tours, we'd have to like sell tickets. So we'd need to have enough fans that they buy tickets to play with us.
To play against us. Oh my god. Yeah, I don't know if we will ever be there. I think if we ever... Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I was just for the last question from Hector. Because he's also an Ember Emerald gamer.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that was a very, very interesting matchup that I think there's lots of things to improve that matchup if you play it correctly from both sides. In this case, though, game 1, he just Prince Johned me and then Prince John Sunshine, I think, on turn 3. And then didn't discard a card for the rest of the game until I played Sisu and I didn't even ramp. So I just played turn 8 Sisu.
Oh, so you knew how to play around it, right? Like that's the.
I mean, he just didn't know.
Oh, you just didn't draw a
I had
discard.
cards in hand.
Oh, right.
Didn't
You
draw
didn't
any
get the.
discards.
Oh no, that's even worse. Oh man.
Yeah. And then the other one, I did often play around it, but in the end, he still. Sometimes I drew cards that I couldn't use up immediately because they were so important. So like the big Sisu, and he discarded a lot of them, but then I just drew the third big Sisu, and that was a game where I was on the play. So that wasn't really his game to take, but the one where Hector was going first was quite hilarious. How it's possible to not draw like any more discards.
Mate, I know that feeling for sure. I've talked about it with this deck so much. It's like getting the Prince John as key, obviously to establish the card draw engine, but then if you don't see any of your discard stuff, it really sucks. Or like I've done stuff where I've played an aerial on turn 3 and the 4 cards I've seen have been like 3 You Forgotten Me's and a Prince John all to the bottom. I'm just like, come on, like what is this? So
there was also the funny dynamic between the bare necessities and him kind of knowing my hand, and then me quilling cards away, and we're just in this mind game where we're talking through. Did I actually get rid of all the bare necessity targets? Did I keep one because he might think I got rid of it anyways? In the end, he inked their bare necessities, and I did get rid of all my bare necessities targets. So they made the correct call there.
It's pretty funny for sure. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I would love if we ever got to that stage to go. I mean, I don't even know if we. I
don't know if it's possible.
It's such a hilarious idea. Oh my god, yeah. I don't know. Maybe
if you're paying out of our pocket and no one's paying for us to be there, then it's possible. But
what? I will say this: if anyone is absolutely crazy enough to want to make this happen, give us a DM and we will definitely consider it. But yeah, that still means a lot to us that you believe in us enough that you would want to see something like that.
Also, I'm flattered by the you all have jobs, because that is
because you do not. Well, I don't know. Moyen coaches a lot of people, and that's no easy. Sure. That's no easy. Moyen's not sitting at home every day with his feet up. Let's just say that Moyen's got stuff he's doing. So yeah. Next comment is from Pasky Raps. If you guys did a 2-hour podcast, I'd still listen. Just saying. I mean, there's times where we often just keep talking and don't look at the timer, so sometimes that may happen for sure.
No, I think it happened for sure. I
think it was the episode with Frank, was it? There was definitely one episode where it got very close to 2 hours.
Like 1 hour 50, I think we had a couple of those. I think we even have maybe at least 1 2-hour episode in there.
And then you've got episodes like last week where we say, guys, we're not feeling good, this is going to be 20 minutes. And it just keeps going and going, so yeah. Next one's from Dr. Noggin. So
that's my favorite comment.
This is Moyen's favorite comment. I remember picking this one out as well. Yeah. So they say Moyen would have made top 64 if he would have won more games. I understand his frustration, but you have to take ownership in your shortcomings first before blaming it on collusion. Moyen, what are your thoughts on this comment?
Yeah, they couldn't be more correct. My bad for even talking about it.
Yep.
No. Okay. So this comment kind of pissed me off, because it's not the first time I talk about this issue. I talk about it like all the time. People are kind of like sick of hearing me talk about it, because I'm quite passionate about the problem. And I do my best to report things when I see them. I do my best to educate the people that don't know about all of these issues. And I don't think, while all of this is true, if I won more games, I do make top cut. And I think it's very important to focus on what I could have changed. All of that's true. I think to tell me I can't talk about the collusion just because if I won more I would get there anyways is kind of outrageous. It's like telling an athlete that came second when the first guy was under doping. It's like a cyclist. Just cycle quicker. Just one faster. If you would have run faster, you could have beaten the guy that pumped up everything down his blood. And I don't understand that. And so if you've played these top tables, I'm sure you have seen some things that were very against the rules. And I think you should report those, but that's a different story. But I'm sure of that. there was lots of DQs that happened for playing game threes or rolling dice to determine who gets the 2-0 on the win and in tables. And with how many there were, and with how when I look at the judges, I know they cannot see everything, and that's fine. But I think it's very reasonable to assume that there was some things that were likely missed. And in the end, I won 13 out of 18 games, which, and I've said before, to be like 100% safe, you kind of need 14 games. With 13, with the way, because I got all those extra points with like 6 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses, I would have been safe on how many tournaments did we have already? 9 of 7 out of 9 tournaments. This wasn't even the bubble. This was 100% in. These 2 times it was the bubble, and that's all right. But how do I just win more games? I tried my best. I'm very happy with how I played. I'm happy with the deck I bought. This just win more is very, very bizarre to me.
Yep. I agree for sure. Yep.
And okay, I also don't. I'm happy with this 13 out of 18 wins. And I'm just because I got that, I don't think I'm entitled to making top cut. It's just when I talk about these issues, I always say, usually there's someone missing out that you don't even see. And just in this case, it happened to be me. So I thought it could make sense to highlight, there's actual persons behind these issues. It's just usually you don't see them, and this time it me. But it's not like this is the first time that I got aware of the issue because now it hit me. No, I knew before. I talked about it before, and my stance on it hasn't changed just because I was affected by it.
I think as well that a lot of people would have handled. I'm not gonna lie. When I saw you the next day, like I think some people getting 65th would be, and understandably, right? Like it's not an easy thing. Yeah. Some people I think would be absolutely like devastated. But I remember when I saw you the next day, you were just like, well, yeah, it happens. And even after, talking about like, the collusion that went on and stuff like that, like, sure, a bit upset, but I've never actually really seen someone handle it as well as you did. You were just like, yeah, it happens. Let's move on. I know the funniest thing, like you mentioned, was like, it was nearly worse when everyone else kept coming up to you to say, oh, I'm so sorry you got 65th. You're like, I know, I've accepted this already. I'm past this,
Suddenly it's not like, oh, how are you doing, more? Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. But you don't have to be sorry. I think I got to let it go. It's fine. I had a result that could have resulted in top.
That you were still happy with overall, right? Like I think, like you said, regardless of if it was the 64th or if the 65th, obviously you would have preferred the 64th, but the performance was still the same. Like for you to get that exact amount of wins and that exact amount of losses, like you still played the same way you played, right? You could have changed how you play. I mean, maybe there's always looking back. Oh, could have done this, could have done that.
I don't. No one can say, oh, I definitely played perfectly. I'm happy with how I played. Maybe there's some stuff I could have done differently. There probably is, but overall, I'm just happy with the result. And I think you would only really see me truly devastated if like I play a high stakes match or just any DLC match, because every match is high stakes because you don't know where it could lead you, right? So if I do like a mistake, I realize it, and like that's what devastates me. If then it costs me the game, that probably devastates me even more. But the 65th place, like that's fine. It's 2,000 players, 65th. I'll take that.
So yeah, the last comment is from Colton McDaniel. They say, I know y'all have mentioned coaching before, but I can't seem to find where. Are y'all still doing sessions? And if so, how can we find y'all?
Yeah, do you do coaching?
Wow, I don't know if this is a like. How do you do coaching?
No, I just didn't want to like take the floor.
No, I definitely. I say I definitely don't do coaching. I don't know, like I don't think I would do coaching per se, but I'm always up. Like I don't know, like for me, I'm always up to if people are interested in, say, for example, the deck like Amber Emerald, I performed well with it. What are some play patterns or matchups you would do? Like if people tag me in the Discord, that's probably the most I'd be happy to answer for stuff like that. But unfortunately, I just don't have the time to do coaching, and I don't really believe in myself to have a coaching mentality. I don't know. I was telling Moyen during the week I want his whiteboard because I feel like Moyen is so structured with everything he does. I'm like, I wish I was more regimented like that, but Yeah, Moyen, I know you said, I think you took a brief break from coaching, right? But with all of the set champs coming up, I think people will definitely be interested to hear where they can find it.
Yeah, so I coached a lot up until Birmingham, but now I've been very busy. We've had the content set champs. This week I'm also attending the Spielmesse in Germany. So if anyone's there also, we maybe I will see you there. But for all of those reasons, I was a little bit slow to get back to all of the coaching requests. I'm starting again probably like Sunday or Monday. So next week I'm back to doing that. Where can you find it? Currently, it's just DM me on either Twitter or Discord. There's some coaching websites that want to partner, and maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. But
I got those emails as well. I was like, I should direct you to this guy. No. Yeah, no. Like I said, mate, there's a lot of things I would just love to do if there were more days in the week, more hours in the day, right?
Yeah, there was some coaching websites where you could also like hold group classes, or you can just like write a guide and have it be paid for.
Professor Moyen, I joined those classes for sure.
Yeah. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, for sure. All right, yes, that's the building section. If you guys want to have your questions read out on next week's pod, be sure to pop a comment down below. So, yeah, like I said, I don't want to go on too much about this deck because you guys are probably sick of hearing about Ember Emerald. I didn't even say the deck right. Amber Emerald at this stage. But
I mean, they might not be sick of it, but it's how many decks or color combinations are played more than this? There's a bunch. This is not like the most meta deck.
Yeah, right? Sure. I just mean on the channel, there's been a lot of content that's pumped out around it, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think now you brought it to the set champs victory. I think you deserve to talk about it, and I think people want to hear it. So
cool.
I guess because I think Amber Emerald is often referred to as one of these more skill-intensive deck with lots of different lines where you can like be very flexible in how you play it still, even if it resolves very much about Prince John. Is there? Can you talk about some of the lines that maybe you think people don't see, that don't play the deck too much, or that even people that play the deck might be missing?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a fun. I mean, when I looked at this deck first myself, I was like, I did kind of struggle to kind of understand how the deck wins. I could see the combo, I could see the under the sea stuff, but the thing that I struggled with the most myself when doing reps with the deck back at the end of set 4 was really trying to close out the game and figuring out what's the best way to do that. So, you've built up your board. Maybe you've got a Prince John and an Aerial. You play Kita for 5. You do Under the Sea. You wipe the board. Okay, where do you go from here? Let's say you're on 2 lore. You need to start winning the game. So, with the Prince John established on the board already, and maybe the Aerial and now the Kita on the board as well, the best way for you to guarantee that you can continue to kind of, deal with your opponent's board, but then also keep slowly questing is the Muses. The Muses is the card that I think is the engine after the Under the Sea, because it allows you to recycle cards like your Aerial, and then through when you're just going to be drawing a lot of cards in general, because if you've got the Prince John on the board, you're singing discard songs. They're discarding the cards, you're drawing cards, you're bouncing Aerial back to your hand, and you're doing this continuous loop. But where it gets super, super tricky is I've often found myself really focusing on like the Aerial value and keeping my like hand so full, where I've had games where I'm like, okay, sure, I've got like 7 to 10 cards in my hand, but my board is just continuously singing and not really questing, or maybe questing for 1 every turn, but I have, like 3 to 4 characters on board. So it's about getting that fine balance right, knowing when to quest with your Aerial rather than just using your Aerial to sing, then do Muse's trigger to bounce it back. Also knowing when to use the Muse's trigger on your opponent's stuff or your own Aerial. Like if you're in a position where you're like, okay, maybe I just keep bouncing their cards back to their hand, like you need to try and calculate, okay, through whatever I have in my hand and what they can kind of replay and establish. If you run out of songs in your hand, can you close out the game in time? Is it worth just ignoring their cards for a little bit, bouncing the Aerial enough times to try and find you under the sea? Which I had in a few games where I literally committed to saying, like, I don't know, I've got like, let's say 8 ink. I could maybe use the Muses to slowly, bounce their stuff back to their hand for a few turns, or I just say, right, I need to play Aerial. If I don't see it, bounce it. Play Aerial. If I don't see it, bounce it. And there is the risk that you might... Sure, you're searching through 12 cards of your deck, so it's quite likely, but there's still going to be a chance that you don't see the Under the Sea. But the cool thing is, if you bounce aerial enough, which I've definitely done in one of my games, I did get back around to the loop where I was pretty sure I knew what was kind of left in this in this stack in my deck. So that's probably the key thing that I would recommend really trying to focus on when you're practicing with this deck. Is like, sure, it's easy to understand. You've got, Prince John into You've Forgotten Me is like super powerful. You're getting rid of 2 of their cards. You're drawing cards. Being able to properly establish the board to then lead into the Under the Sea is really important. And also knowing when to take certain cards in certain situations if you're presented with a multitude of songs. Because there were definitely times when I think the toughest decision, if you get an aerial and you see a Bruno and an Under the Sea, like that can often be a tough decision, because if they've got a big threat on the board, sure, the Bruno does seem like the obvious choice and it's probably going to really help you there. But then okay, maybe if I've played an Under the Sea already and then suddenly they're able to flood the board somehow, this Under the Sea is going to be at the bottom of my deck, and it's going to be really tricky. If they start establishing a big board, I'm not really going to have those clears for it. So it really does revolve around bouncing aerial. Sometimes bouncing Ursula as well, if your opponent just happens to have a lot of songs. I found like bouncing Ursula against some Amber Steel players was actually quite fun, because I could kind of just like double utilize the ability to just take songs out of the hand. I think the only difference with my version compared to some other decks is I have the 2 You're Welcome in there, and You're Welcome is definitely an interesting card, because like it's in there for like maybe it's some item interaction, maybe some location interaction, but like I think 95% of the time I use You're Welcome to like use muses to like sing it on herself, to shuffle her into my deck, draw 2 additional cards, I bounce an aerial back to my hand, but like this is stuff that people don't really think about, right? They're like, I'll just do You're Welcome on my opponent's card to remove it, and then they've got 2 cards in hand. Sure, sometimes that works out if you have the You've Forgotten Me to pair up with that, so you just basically negate the draw effect from the You're Welcome, but then you also have to spend 4 resources. So I think most of the time You're Welcome for me in this deck specifically is just used on recycling your own characters, mainly being sung with the muses or aerial, mainly targeting themselves unless you've got like a 1 cost or a 2 cost you don't really care about, and then getting more cards to keep your opponent kind of at bay. So it's definitely this like hard thing to think about, but you always just want to keep your opponent's board kind of on lockdown, and especially against Amber Steel, which is a very tricky deck to deal with. Like you really, really, really don't want to give them a situation where they just have one of these 5 cost singers on the board, be that Prince Naveen or be that Aerial or whatever. Because I feel like as soon as they do the whole new world, you just kind of your game plan can kind of go out the window. But luckily, I think in this meta, and Moin, you can kind of agree or disagree with me right now, I feel like a lot of the decks have cut down, at least on the Queen Shift package, which has benefited this deck a little bit, because if you're playing this deck and you have the nuts opening hand, right, but you're on the draw and you've got the Diablo Shift, the Prince John, the discards, and your opponent just goes turn 1 Queen, turn 2 Shift Queen, whole new world, you feel so sad. Like I think it literally means like you've literally just lost the game. And the fact that more Amber Steel players that I've been facing at least have they still keeping the Robin Hoods in there for the shift lines and stuff like that. That can still be frustrating if they get the whole new world. But if you can survive to the turn 2, you should have the Ursula in your opening hand to get rid of the song card. And and there's even situations where it's like, okay, they have like a Strength of a Raging Fire, or they have a whole new world with the Shift Robin Hood possibility. Like, you just have to get rid of the whole new world in that situation, because as soon as they do that, it's really, really, really bad for you. So ward characters help out extremely well in most of your matchups. They're really, really hard to interact with. But yeah, like if you guys are interested in learning like the a lot of the ins and outs, I think the best advice I can give is to watch some of the games, especially the top 8 matches, because it's a lot of me doing these cycles and these loops, and you'll kind of understand why I make certain decisions and why. I think there were some decisions that I did kind of make mistakes in over in that event as well. Like, I think it's very rare for someone to play this deck absolutely perfectly, because there are some really tough decisions, like I said, about like, okay, do I just turn on the gas? If they top deck this, do they get that? So yeah, but I think it really helps. There were a lot of players I played against that they weren't familiar, they didn't practice against this deck enough, and I think that can help out in some matchups. I mean, I've discussed it with you, Moyen, right? Like, I feel like generally against most red-blue players, I feel like I'm maybe a little bit favored. Favored if they really don't know how to play around the things. They just do their normal thing where they ramp, they use Quill. Oh, look, suddenly they've got 2 cards in their hand. No, they don't. You discard 2, I draw 2, and the game literally becomes they have to top deck Sisu to win the game, right? So, yeah.
So before all of, I think the main thing that I'm hearing is, okay, the most complicated card in the deck is probably the Muses, because you can bounce your own card, you can bounce opposing cards, and you always have to decide, because basically bouncing opponent's cards provides tempo, bouncing your own cards provides value, and you always have to find the right balance. How much tempo/value do I need to really be able to get myself into a favorable position in this game? And I mean, with all of those things that you've been saying, with like, it's like very, very hard to play optimally, which I would definitely agree with, but it's not something I've played a lot, so I do think it is well positioned in the meta. It's not one of these like top 4 decks where everyone knows how to play against them. Sure, your like top players, they probably do fine against it, but I think a big part of the field might be more inclined to do mistakes against Amber Emerald than they would against Amber Steel, Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst, all of these things. So I do think with Seattle coming up next month, this is definitely a deck I want to pick up and learn, to at least have it in my locker if I decide I actually want to bring this to Seattle. From the red-blue side, the matchup is quite tricky. There's lots of difficult decision points on, do you get rid of all your bare necessities targets? If you get Prince John bare necessities on turn 3, it can really, really hurt. But by getting rid of those, you also might have a worse hand if they don't go exactly Prince John bare necessities turn 3. Sometimes it might even mean you could get rid of all of your bare necessity targets, but only if you get rid of your brawl. Then you have to make this risk assessment of, do I play one of the bare necessities or the Diablo? How much would either of these punish me? In general, of course, it's a lot about setting up the early Flava Charm, getting the card draw going, getting card advantage, and then if the Prince John hits the board, especially, you just kind of, if possible, maybe you try to just ink your entire hand or use it as quickly as possible to like kind of get rid of that draw engine, and then at some point just draw into any board clear, hopefully quick enough before they like snowball out of control. But I also think just about Ruby Sapphire, I think with Emerald Steel performing so well in Vegas and kind of being like the new popular thing, I don't think it really at least yet, it doesn't really overtake the top decks like Ruby Sapphire in popularity, but it's gotten a lot more popular in the last few weeks. I think Ruby Sapphire can adapt to that really well. Maybe the matchup was very close before, but I think if you just go back to playing like 4 Medusa, 4 Falco, you can deal with the Diablos and the Coves quite well. You can deal with the Sad Beasts later a lot more consistently. And if you get rid of those, you generally buy yourself the time, because they don't draw multiple cards a turn, to really reach your late game. So I think we might see red-blue builds revert a little bit more in that direction to how they used to play in set 4. And the problem with that for Ember Emerald might be is that Ember Emerald isn't the reason they're changing their deck, but it kind of hits them too. So we'll see how much that impacts. Like, I mean, first of all, we have to see how much actually go in this red-blue direction. Just because I say it doesn't mean everyone's going to do it.
Yeah.
But if that happens, how much that impacts the specific matchup against Amber Emerald will be interesting to see.
I think the Ursula 2-cost in particular against red blue is such a key card, because, correct me if I'm wrong, all of your songs in the deck are uninkable, right? So you can't even ink them against it.
Yeah.
I think it's How Far I'll Go, One Jump, and Be Prep, right? Usually. So the Ursula can like really, you know, like if there's been so many games where like if I'm on the play and I go 1-drop and I see the, like, you know, just the 1/1 jump, and then I do the Ursula, like it can be kind of crippling. If the T-Po's there, sure, you still get the ramp, but then there's still a card gone from your hand, another card that's going from, you know what I mean? Like it's something that you can't really play around the 2-cost Ursula too much unless like you're able to use the song before it comes out. But it's kind of like this thing you always have to consider, I feel like, as the red-blue player, that the 2-cost Ursula on turn 2 is probably going to be rough for you a lot of the time, compared to if it's just the Sir Hiss, right? Although the Sir Hiss equally, I'll say, is like it's not as backbreaking as the Ursula because the Sir Hiss doesn't discard a card. But if they establish, like you said, if they go for this line where it's like 2-drop, 3-drop John, sing with the 2-drop discard, and on the next turn they do like the potential to do You've Forgotten Me and sing with the 2-drop again, another discard song, like that's stuff that people really need to consider. And sure, like you said, you can't always play around that because they're not always going to have it, but you do need to consider that is a possible outcome, on turn 4.
Yeah, it's I think in general, if you know the matchup, you can play around it in your mulligan a little bit, but not even by that much. It's like usually you would often keep Tipo and 1-jump to enable the sing 1-jump line on turn 3. Again, if you know you're playing against Emerald, if you're offered both Tipo and 1-jump, you might just get rid of the 1-jump if you are on the draw to maybe not have a song against the Ursula. But the 2-cost ramp is still so important. If I have 1-jump, no Tipo in my opening, I will still keep the 1-jump. You don't always Ursula me on turn 2.
Yep.
Even if you do, maybe I get the second 1-jump. But if I'm offered like multiple 1-jumps but no Tipo on the draw, I would just keep 2 1-jumps because even if you get to discard a card, if I get to my 4-ink turn 3, I get to play the Flavasham early or maybe even the Alfargo. I'm generally much happier than if I throw it away and then I just miss my turn 2 ramp, even if you do whatever you want, which is very similar to how it was against Bucky in set 4.
Yeah, I think the only other weird thing in that matchup, and I honestly think this is rarely going to happen, but if you do play You're Welcome in the version of the deck, like there's a really cool thing that like you can basically toss the dime back in the deck so that even like, usually if it gets banished, that Tamatoa can just kind of recycle it. But that's not always going to work in your favor because there is always that slight possibility that you shuffle the dime back into their deck, but then they just redraw it and they can play it again. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this card You're Welcome, when I first thought of adding it into the deck, I wasn't too high on it, and I'm still not that high on it. But I do think it just being another inkable song that can sometimes benefit you to get to your Under the Sea faster, or especially like I said, if you've done your enough aerials where you kind of know, oh, my deck's in this position that I'm like not really happy with. Suddenly, if you do a You're Welcome, you there's a chance that your Under the Sea could be at the top again. You know what I mean? You kind of reshuffle your deck, and
I have one Under the Sea left, but I know it's at the bottom. Zack, shuffle it, give yourself the out again. Also, You Have Forgotten Me, because after the Set Champs event, we also played some Star Wars, and it just exists in Star Wars. There's not even a Prince John lookalike, right? You don't get to draw off it, but there's just a 4-cost your opponent discards 2, and it's a good card in Star Wars too.
It's good in Star Wars because it's like you can only do one thing and then your opponent does one thing. So if you've no cards in hand, I draw 2, you have the initiative, you just play You've Forgotten Me, and I just say, okay, GG,
And also when we were playing draft, even without Prince John, it's just card advantage and can be really, really disruptive, even without the draw.
Well, in multiplayer as well, because it says every opponent, which is just insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. Then the Prince John, You Have Forgotten Me in multiplayer.
In multiplayer, yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I mean, like there's not much more to say about the list, to be honest. That's it. Like, I think if I was to adjust it right now, honestly, back at the end of set 4, my deck was exactly the same, except instead of the 2 You're Welcomes, I had the 3 Cricky instead of the 2. And I had a Mother Knows Best as well. I wouldn't be opposed to putting the extra Cricky back in and just having the 1 You're Welcome, because Cricky at certain moments is actually such a clutch card. It is one of my favorite cards within Emerald because it's so flexible, and sometimes it's just like the card that you're instantly going to ink, but sometimes it's the card you play. You get some real kind of tempo back from it, and then it's just like, I mean, it's the card in your deck that quests for the most, which is often pretty good when you want to start turning on the gas, so... Yeah, and with that, I guess before we kind of close out here, Moyen, I would love to hear about your version of Red Blue that you played, and ask, did you make any alterations to it compared to the list that you played in Birmingham, or is it more or less the same list?
While I was happy with the list that I played in Birmingham, I do think we have to now adapt to Emerald Steel rising in popularity, maybe Amber Steel with how poor it performed, even Red Purple didn't perform super well. Those maybe declining a bit in popularity. So I think Red Blue is like always in flux, adapting. because depending on these meta shares, Maui gets better, gets worse, Medusa gets better, gets worse. Your removal package in the board wipes from Sisu, maybe even Scar B prep changes. What I am quite set on right now is I want at least 7 2-drop ramps. I want lots of how far I go, if possible. I think because of Emerald Steel, I'm between 3 and 4 Medusa again. I like at least 1 Vitalisphere, 1 Ice Block. I don't think you have to play 2 Dime. I do think in this meta you get away with just playing 1. You make the red-purple matchup quite a bit worse, but or you make it worse, but improve the other matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I think Develop Your Brain has a fair shout to just make your late game that much more consistent. Like, these extra digging cards are also quite good against the discard cards too, because you go into these top deck situations, and that's really where Develop Your Brain vision really shine. So yeah, I've played. I think I changed like 5 or 6 cards in this in the set champs in comparison to Web Birmingham, but none of these lists I'm like, oh, this is the perfect list. I will always play this. I will always try to stay on top of what the meta requires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think all of those changes make sense in relation to the meta kind of adapting for sure. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this week, guys. I want to say good luck to everyone who's starting their set championship journey this weekend. Moyen, will you get a chance to play in a few, do you think?
So I will be at the convention. I didn't look. Maybe I can sneak into one of the events if there's space. But if not, I'll like that. That's fine too. This is the first time where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll play some set champs if there's some nearby, and I think I'll enjoy them. But it's no longer like this big priority to farm prize cards. I think that maybe that part is just gone for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's. I'm actually kind of quite happy, weirdly, the way set champs has gone, and maybe a lot of people will disagree with me, because I feel like right now a lot of the players that do go to, like, you know, their locals every week, like, this is something that they're really going to look forward to. And I will say Ravensburger UK have actually done something quite nice in Ireland, that because Ireland is a relatively small place with a limited amount of stores, for the stores that have, you know, done a great job of hosting events in the past and stuff, they've actually provided 2 events for 2 stores in Ireland. So the main one in Dublin will have one at kind of the start of October and a set champs at the end of October, which I think is really cool. And I think another one for up in the north of Ireland as well. They're going to have two separate events. So for players who, you know, can't travel to these challenges all the time, but still want that, you know, they want to feel like they've really earned something, and, you know, you're playing against these players every week and you're trying to adapt to your own local meta and stuff. I think the set champs are still going to feel super rewarding to players. I am still of the same opinion of you that I don't think I'm going to play too many this time around, just because I'm super busy in general, right? I feel like if I had the time and nothing was going on, I would definitely be up for playing some set champs. But I think the days of Podcana earning, I don't know, like over 10 prize cards in total is probably behind us. But I'm excited to hear how you know, the set champs are going to go for all of you guys. I hope you're excited for it. Definitely DM Moyen if you want some coaching, if you want some advice. And yeah, I'm interested to see, like, just in general, like, because these set champs are going to be kind of good training sessions for people if you're going to be going to Seattle. You know what I mean? See if the meta is going to slowly develop over these next few weeks. Maybe the green steel will rise. Like you said, maybe these ruby sapphires will start to adapt in response to that. And it's going to be an exciting time for sure.
Yeah, I didn't want to come across as like complaining about this, because that's not what I'm doing at all. It's I'm fine if the set champs are like less EV for like the grinders and the super competitive players. I think that's completely fine. If this means the events are also more enjoyable for the locals that play there like more frequently, and also like maybe a little bit more casual players, I think that's a good thing. I guess the slight worry is maybe even for these players it might mean that they, with the top 8 cards instead of top 4, maybe it's something that they aspire to a little bit less than before. But there was definitely the feedback where people were just a bit upset that, you know, they make top card and then they don't even get a card for it. I didn't really think there was too big of an issue, because it just made the cards more. It made it more rewarding when you did get them, and now sometimes we have like these 16-player events where there's like 8 players get a card.
Sure.
And I think it feels a bit better if it's not like half of the tournament gets a card. But
yeah,
I think if just in general, if this means this event gets more enjoyable as a whole, that's a good thing for the game. And the competitive players, they have enough tournaments to really aspire and playing just in the DLCs right now.
Yeah, I think for me, if I will like kind of attend any set champs now, if anything for me, it may be the idea of like, oh, really fighting for the first place now, because I feel like previously it's like if you get the top 4, like you really don't care that much. I mean, you're still happy if you win and stuff. I mean, I did, but like I don't know. I don't know how much I did in comparison to like to like now, because it is top 8. Like I feel like I really want to try and get the mat and kind of win, because this top 8, everyone is kind of on equal ground now. That once you make it to the weird thing is now once you've made the top 8, people are happy. But then the top 8 to top 4 game, people are like, if I lose, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was the opposite, right? You know what I mean? So
yeah, that was the most important match. Right now, there's no difference between top 4 and top 8, is there?
No, absolutely no difference at all.
I guess we kind of tried. So we fixed the issue of 5th to 8th place feeling bad, and now we have the issue of probably 3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th not feeling great.
They won a game that didn't really give them anything.
Sure.
But yeah.
You can't make everyone happy, right? You can't. Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed listening to this podcast, the number one thing you can do is leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. There is a video version of this over at youtube.com/@Podcana podcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. The Twitters are at Kawatech_CG and at Moyen_HS. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.